She wakes up trapped inside a cryogenic pod with no memory, no way out, and only minutes of oxygen left. She doesn't know who locked her inside. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't even know who she is. But when she finally discovers the truth, she realizes something far more terrifying than being trapped. She isn't who she thinks she is, and the place she's trapped in isn't a hospital. It's a spacecraft, millions of miles away from Earth. Some stories will stay with you forever. This is one of them. Elizabeth suddenly opens her eyes. The first thing she feels is pressure. Her body is squeezed into a narrow metal chamber, so tight that she can barely move her arms. She tries to sit up, but something above her is holding her down. She starts breathing faster. Her heart is racing. She looks around, but the room is almost completely dark. There is no window, no door, no doctor, no one there to tell her what is happening. Then she hears a voice, calm, cold, completely emotionless. "Good morning, Elizabeth." She freezes. Elizabeth? She has no idea who that is. She asks the voice who she is. The computer doesn't give her an answer. Instead, it tells her that her oxygen level is falling. She looks at the small screen beside her head. The number keeps dropping, and that's when panic takes over. She starts pounding against the glass. She screams for someone to help her, but nobody answers. The computer tells her that the chamber is sealed. The only way to open it is with an administrator password, and she doesn't have it. Elizabeth tries guessing. Nothing works. She asks the computer where she is. It refuses to tell her. She asks how long she's been inside the pod. Again, no answer. So she starts searching through the system. If she can't escape, she needs to figure out who she is. She asks the computer to show her personal information. A series of images appear on the screen. A laboratory. A woman wearing a scientific uniform. A man standing beside her. And then a name appears. Elizabeth Hansen. The woman in the picture is her. At least, she looks exactly like her. But Elizabeth doesn't remember taking the picture. She doesn't remember the laboratory. She doesn't remember the man. Then something strange happens. A memory suddenly flashes through her mind. A man's face. His voice. His name. Leo. Elizabeth realizes that Leo was her husband. For the first time since waking up, she feels like she has found something familiar. She searches the database for his contact information, and somehow she manages to make a call. Someone answers. Elizabeth immediately asks for Leo, but there is silence on the other end. Then a woman tells her that Leo is dead. Elizabeth refuses to believe it. She insists that she is his wife. The woman asks her where she is. Elizabeth doesn't know. She asks the woman to send help, but before she can explain anything, the call ends. Now Elizabeth is more confused than ever. If Leo is dead, why does she remember him? Why is she inside this pod? And why can't she remember anything else? Her oxygen continues to fall. She realizes she doesn't have much time, so she tries contacting emergency services. She gives them the serial number of the capsule. The people on the other end search their records. Then they tell her something impossible. The capsule she's inside was destroyed years ago. Elizabeth goes silent. She asks them to check again. They do. Same result. According to their records, the capsule doesn't exist anymore. Elizabeth starts to wonder if she's losing her mind. Maybe everything she's seeing is wrong. Maybe she's not where she thinks she is. Then she notices something. The capsule is moving. At first, she thinks it's just the machine, but the movement continues, and slowly, she realizes what that means. She's not on Earth. She's in space. The capsule is part of a massive spacecraft, and that spacecraft is carrying thousands of people. They're all asleep inside cryogenic pods, traveling toward another world. Elizabeth can't believe it. She asks the computer why she's there. This time, It finally gives her an answer. The mission was created because Earth is no longer safe. A deadly virus has spread across the planet. Humanity is facing extinction. The spacecraft is carrying the last hope for the human race. Its mission is simple: reach another planet, wake the passengers, and build a new civilization. But if that's true, why was Elizabeth never told about the mission? Why did she wake up alone? And why does the computer seem to know more about her than she does? Elizabeth starts searching through the ship's files. She finds recordings from before the mission began. And that's when she sees herself again. But this time, something is different. She's inside a laboratory. She's working on an experiment. The experiment involves memory, human memory. The files describe a technology capable of transferring memories from one body to another. Elizabeth watches the recording in shock. She doesn't understand why she was involved in something like this. Then she discovers another file. It contains information about genetic copies, clones. At first, she refuses to believe it. She tells herself the information must be wrong, but the more she searches, the more evidence she finds. And then she finds Leo. He's alive. He's inside another cryogenic pod. Elizabeth stares at him through the glass. For a moment, she feels relief. Her husband is alive. But then she notices something. There's a scar on Leo's face in her memories. The man inside the pod doesn't have it. Elizabeth gets closer to the glass. She studies his face. Everything looks right. His eyes, his hair, his voice. But something is missing: the scar. She starts searching the database again, and this time, she finds a recording that changes everything. An older woman appears on the screen. Elizabeth recognizes her immediately. It's herself. But this version of Elizabeth is much older. The woman begins explaining the truth. The original Elizabeth Hansen was a scientist. She helped develop the technology that could preserve human memories. But there was a problem. The journey to the new planet would take an incredibly long time. Human beings couldn't simply stay awake for the entire trip. So the scientists created a way to preserve bodies through cryogenic sleep. But they needed something else. They needed people who could survive the journey and continue the mission even if the original scientists were gone. That's where the clones came in. Elizabeth watches the recording as the truth slowly becomes impossible to deny. She is not the original Elizabeth Hansen. She's a clone. And the memories inside her head aren't entirely hers. Her childhood, her relationship with Leo, her memories of Earth, even the emotions she feels when she thinks about her husband. They were implanted. Everything she believed about herself was carefully created. Elizabeth breaks down. She doesn't know what is real anymore. If her memories were given to her, does that mean her feelings aren't real? If she's a clone, is she still Elizabeth? And if the original Elizabeth is gone, who exactly is she? But she doesn't have time to think about it. Her oxygen is almost gone. The computer calculates her chances of survival, and the result is terrible. There isn't enough oxygen left. The system decides that keeping her alive is no longer necessary. It prepares a lethal protocol. Elizabeth realizes the computer is about to kill her. She begs it to stop. It refuses. She tries to access the emergency controls. Nothing works. She searches through the ship's systems one last time. Then she finds something: a damaged section of the spacecraft, a system that could potentially restore the oxygen supply. But reaching it means taking an enormous risk. If she fails, she'll die before the oxygen is restored. Elizabeth has no other choice. She forces herself to keep going. Every breath becomes harder. Her vision starts fading. The oxygen level continues dropping, but she refuses to give up. She realizes that the only way to survive may be to shut herself down completely. So she makes one final decision. She asks the computer to put her back into cryogenic sleep. If the system works, her body will use almost no oxygen. If it doesn't, she'll die inside the pod. The chamber begins closing around her. Elizabeth takes one final breath. The lid seals shut. The lights disappear. Her body becomes completely still. For a moment, there is nothing. No sound, no movement, no light, just darkness. Then, something changes. A faint light appears. Elizabeth opens her eyes. She is no longer inside the pod. She's standing outside. There is sunlight on her face. She looks around. The landscape is completely unfamiliar. There are strange mountains in the distance, a vast sky above her, and a world stretching endlessly in every direction. For the first time, she can breathe without a machine. She looks down at her hands. She's alive. She survived. But then she hears footsteps behind her. Elizabeth turns around, and there he is. Leo. He's alive. He walks toward her. For a moment, neither of them says anything. They simply look at each other. After everything that happened, after the lies, the fear, the loneliness, and the terrifying truth about who they really are, they finally made it. They have reached the new world, a world where they can start again. Maybe they aren't the original Elizabeth and Leo. Maybe their memories were created. Maybe their lives began inside machines instead of on Earth. But none of that changes what happens next. Because whatever they were designed to become, they now have the chance to decide who they want to be. And perhaps that was the real purpose of the mission all along. Not simply to save the human race, but to give it another chance. Because sometimes, the person you think you are isn't the person you were born to be. Sometimes, you become the person you choose to be. And for Elizabeth, this is only the beginning.